So today I will be talking about Japan and Korea's relationship and why there are still conflicts today. In present day, Korea and Japan are still rather tense, and this is due to their history and many events that happened in the past couple of years. In front of the Japanese embassy in South Korea stands a bronze statue that represents Korean comfort women. When entering the Japanese embassy, the statue is unavoidable, along with protesters who are frequently present. Next to the embassy is South Korea's National Museum of Contemporary History. At one point in time, there was an exhibition that celebrated the Korean nationalist who killed the Prime Minister of Japan. The name of this exhibition was Wulim, which means echo. Koreans say they named it this because the gunshots that killed him are still joyfully echoing today throughout Korea. Many of these protests throughout Korea and in front of their embassy are caused by the visiting of Yasukuni Shrine and Japan's history textbooks. The Yasukuni Shrine houses 2.5 million men, women, and children who died during World War II. However, among the 2.5 million people, 100 of them are World War II criminals, including 14 Class A criminals. A majority of them are the ones who hurt and abused Koreans during the Japanese occupation of Korea. In 2013, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe visited the shrine as an anti-war gesture. However, many Koreans were upset because they claimed that he was not visiting the shrine as an anti-war gesture or to represent the government. They were also upset because he was paying respects to people who had hurt the Koreans so badly. The Koreans are also upset because in Japanese history textbooks that are used in schools, it seems as if they softened the guilt of what they did to the Koreans, and sometimes did not even acknowledge them at all. However, Japan has apologized for what they have done to the Koreans. In 1995, Prime Minister Tomichi Murayama and in 2001, Prime Minister Junichiro Koizumi both apologized, but Koreans feel that their apologies are not sincere enough. In order to understand the conflicts between Korea and Japan, you need to know their dark history. From 1910 to 1945, Japan occupied Korea. During this period, Japan worked to wipe out Korean culture, language, history, and religion. Although the Japanese colonists did see this as unifying Japan and Korea, the Koreans saw this as cultural genocide. In schools and universities, they emphasized love for the Japanese empire and made it a crime to teach history and Korean language, causing their language to slowly mix with Japanese language. They burned over 200,000 historical documents, which removed a lot of historical memory of Korea. The Japanese also worked to remove cultural symbols. For example, the Gyeongbokgung, which was a very important monument in Korea. It was built in Seoul in 1395 as the royal palace of the Joon dynasty, and represented a powerful time of sovereignty and independence, which the Japanese tore down a third of and made the rest of it a tourist attraction. Of course, the Koreans were very upset by this because they were removing a monument that was so special to their history and culture. The Japanese even worked to assimilate Korean and Japanese through their religion and names. They did this by establishing Shinto shrines where they forced them to worship those who had conquered them and forced Koreans to adopt Japanese family names. Although people did resist the Japanese, many adopted Shinto religion out of fear and took Japanese last names because without them, they would not be able to apply for basic necessities such as mail delivery and ration cards. Another part of history that Korea is very upset about is the treatment of Korean women at this time. The Japanese recruited, kidnapped, and convinced Korean women to travel to supposed nursing units or other wartime jobs, but instead turned out to be brothels. Around 215 brothels housed between 20,000 to 410,000 comfort women in very awful conditions. In these brothels, they are forced to have sex and many experienced repeated rapes, physical pain, pregnancies, and STDs. After World War II, many comfort women were seen as social outcasts since they were undocumented, and some even died from STDs or committed suicide. Many were upset by the Japanese because after World War II, the Japanese tended to downplay what they did to these Korean comfort women, who went unnoticed for a long time, until now. Recently, many Korean comfort women have been speaking out and telling their stories. They had gained This had gained them recognition and anger towards Japan by other countries. During the occupation, there were many Koreans who migrated to Japan. This included the Zainichi, the Chongryon, and in present day, Koreans who have naturalized into Japanese society. The earliest group were the Zainichi, which means residing in Japan. In 1930, there was a recognizable group of Koreans who experienced lower wages, lived in ghettos, and faced poverty and discrimination. From 1939 to 1945, 700,000 to 800,000 of them were forced into labor in Japan, and 200,000 of them were forced to fight for the Japanese Empire. After the war, many left, but 600,000 of them settled in Japan. These settlers were no longer recognized as citizens, changing the term of Zainichi to an exemption of the Japanese population that was on temporary stay and seen as secondary citizens. And from here, a lot of the Zainichi began to lose their rights. In December of 1945, they lost their voting rights. In 1947, they became aliens to Japan. And in 1950, Korean mothers and children lost their Japanese nationality. This caused many to join a community of Koreans called the Chongryon, a North Korean bubble in Japan. This group was funded by North Koreans and the leader at the time, Kim Jong-il, who provided loans and established ethnic Korean schools that taught Koreans language and history. You must be wondering, why did these Koreans in Japan choose to follow North Korea? They say that the long tradition, family, and support that Kim Jong-il provided gave them belonging, and a community and a nation that was discriminatory and pretty much completely against them. However, from the 1990s to 2003, there was a definite fall of status of the Chongryon community in Japan. In 1990, many Chongryon Koreans no longer had interest in North Korea and began to pave a new future for themselves. But they still sent their children to Chongryon schools because they still faced discrimination in normal Japanese schools at that time. And in 2003, when North Korea withdrew from the Nuclear Power Pact and finally admitted to abducting 17 or more Japanese citizens, many rallies against the Chongryon took place, and the Japanese government demanded that they repay their debts. But since they were so badly in debt, they had to declare bankruptcy and close many of their buildings and headquarters. Now in present-day Japan, there is less racism towards the Koreans. This is caused by South Korean sports and popular culture, as well as Japanese tourists in South Korea, which have been gaining more popularity. There are also 10,000 Koreans who choose to naturalize each year into Japanese citizens. This is seen on this graph that shows Koreans in green and the increase of naturalization in the 2000s. So you're probably wondering, what is the future for Korea and Japan's relationship? It is definitely getting better, but the relationship is not that great yet. This is seen in politics between Japan and Korea. The first leadership summit between Japan, South Korea, and China occurred on November 1st, 2015, and the first meeting in a long time between South Korea and Japan happened on November 2nd, 2015. In May of 2018, South Korean President Moon Jae-in's representative to Japan met with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, where they discussed and agreed on many topics. In 2018 and onward, both Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and President Moon Jae-in have been working on their relationship, but tensions are still high, especially after Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's visit to the Yasukuni Shrine in 2013. Their relationship is also getting better thanks to events that have been going on recently, such as when they joint hosted the World Cup in 2002, or now that Korean popular culture has been more prominent in Japan, it is beginning to gain more acceptance in Japanese society. For example, the Korean soap opera Winter Sonata, which gained more popularity in Japan. However, the most important event that strengthened their relationship was the Korean-Japan Friendship Year in 2005, which celebrated 40 years of diplomatic relations. This was also the start of the Korea-Japan Friendship Festival, which also began in 2005, in hopes of continuing friendly interactions and cultural exchanges. You must also be wondering, can younger Korean and Japanese generations strengthen this relationship? Although they agree on many topics, such as the worries of North Korean threats and want both of their nations to have greater involvement with each other and the rest of the world, there is still some awkwardness between both groups of people. Even if these younger generations seem to not have a problem with each other, similar to the generations before them, these younger Koreans still want a better apology from Japan on what they did to Korea. They hope that when Japan has a more sincere apology for Korea, they will be able to move past the history and have a better relationship with each other. In the end, progress has been made. For example, Tokyo and Seoul shared common interests in trade, environment, science, tech, cultural exchange, business, and tourism. But what has happened between these two countries will never be forgotten, and there's still a long way to go before the relationship can get better.